All right, guys, so I just bought this camera for $299, which is insane.
And it also happens to have the same image sensor as this camera for $1,000. So essentially, you're getting the same image quality for a third of the price. Unfortunately, I think that's about the only good thing that Canon left in this camera, so I wanted to find out if Canon's cheapest mirrorless camera is still worth buying.
I always get asked, like, what's the best camera for under $500? Pretty much every time I just say to upgrade your phone. I've been looking for a different solution, and right now, I think we have a different answer. So this is the Canon EOS R100, and today this is going to be by far the cheapest APS-C mirrorless camera that you can buy right now. And again, like, this is not some pre-2020 old discounted, it's not a used camera. This was just announced last year. So I will post all the links in the description to whatever the best deal is, because I'm not sure just how long this particular deal is going to last, but I want to make sure that you guys have the best sale possible if you want to pick one of these up. But before you go out and buy it, there is at least one thing that might be a complete deal breaker. There always is, right? They just can't seem to get everything right. So obviously this is a cheap camera. I knew that going in. So there's a lot of, I don't know, modern camera tech that you're not going to get on the R100. And I guess I knew that. And most of it's going to be reasonable when you start to consider that, yeah, this is cheaper than 2-year-old GoPro cameras. Now, on paper, I do think Canon did probably too good of a job of trying to milk every feature to make it look as amazing as possible on a spec sheet. So if you read that, you might not get a very accurate depiction of what this camera is. But if you didn't read it and you're watching this video instead, just know, probably don't expect to be overwhelmed, especially with the hardware and autofocus and speed and probably video as well, but more on that later. So the camera itself, it feels decent for a camera this compact. It's super lightweight. It's only 12 ounces, which is really light. And the grip, again, it's small. It's not an amazing grip or anything like that, but it is sturdy. I don't feel like I'm going to drop the camera. Overall, like, hardware-wise, I actually think this is pretty good for a $299 camera. Now, on the top of the camera, you only get this one mode dial and then one scroll wheel, and that's it. In fact, this is like it for being able to control the camera, period. So if you want to shoot manual, this is a little bit of a problem because you can't control both your aperture and your shutter speed at the same time without like cycling through settings. Now the viewfinder on this is going to be a decent viewfinder. The resolution is actually 2.3 million dots, which is good. Like, that's the same as the Canon R10, which is a lot more money. And the only thing with this is that it's very small. So if you actually look in the viewfinder, you're going to get a little bit more of that tunnel vision. It's going to look like your object is just, the screen is just a little further away. But I am going to take some issue with the rear LCD screen. So it is 3 inches, which that part is fine. The resolution is 1 million dots, which again is like fine. It is not articulating, so it doesn't flip out at all. And it is not a touch screen. And that's probably the bigger issue here, because that means you cannot just like tap on a subject to be able to focus on them. Plus, I do think that like the target audience for this is going to be a lot of first-time photographers who probably until now have mostly used their phone or a touch screen for controlling all of your camera settings. I mean, you let me know, like, would you prefer this with a touch screen? Do you care that it doesn't have a touch screen? And is this a deal breaker for you? I also think this would be a great camera for kids learning photography, and I know my kids would definitely prefer this with a touchscreen. In fact, for them, that might be a deal breaker on that. This video is brought to you by Soundstripe, where you can find royalty-free music, sound effects, and video even faster with AI search powered by ChatGPT. Let me show you how this works. With AI search, you can just type in any information on the music you're looking for, whether it's a style of project, any mood, or important details. And when you find something you like, you can just add it to your playlist, add it to your favorites, find similar songs, or even download any additional stems right from the download page. But here's where it gets crazy. So let's say that song is great, but I want to customize it specifically for my project. This brand new feature will use the power of AI to analyze the track, break it into sections, and then you can pull from these sections to design your own fully custom mix that goes perfectly with your video. And with an optional Adobe Premiere integration tool, in just seconds, I can search and add additional music and sound effects directly to my timeline without ever having to leave my project.
They also gave me a coupon code to get 10% off when you sign up today using the link in the description. So go ahead and check it out. And big thanks to Soundstripe for sponsoring this video.
So obviously for $299, I didn't expect this to be like some crazy sports and wildlife action camera, but Canon says 6.5 frames per second in their spec sheet, and that comes with a massive asterisk attached to it, because in order to get that, you can't actually have the full phase detection autofocus, which means you can basically only shoot that on non-moving, non-tracking subjects. So if you're trying to photograph like your kids playing sports or something like that, you're only going to get 3 frames per second. And that's going to sound like this. It's pretty slow. Now autofocus, which is usually a highlight of new cameras like this. Instead, on the R100, it just really feels like a step back in time to like the old first generation Canon cameras, which really surprised me because autofocus technology has improved massively over the years. So usually autofocus is going to be the feature that I would recommend to justify buying a new camera instead of like a 5-year-old camera that's just discounted to the same price. Unlike the R10, which is actually a very good kind of modern autofocus system on this one. So you don't really have any tracking modes on this. You have general tracking. So anywhere there's a moving subject in the frame, it'll try and track that, but you can't actually select a subject. The only other thing that you have, so if you're tracking people or photographing people, you have one modern feature, and it's going to be eye autofocus, but it's still like very extremely basic. Even for a beginner's camera, I would have liked the ability to just tap or select a subject somehow on the screen with your buttons or dials or something like that, and then have the camera kind of track that across the frame. And without it, it just kind of feels like it's not quite enough. And it probably feels like I am being extremely negative right now, because that's how it feels with me saying it. But I think we're about to take a turn for the better, because the massive reason to buy this camera is going to be image quality. So for $299, you are getting a 24 megapixel APS-C sensor. This sensor is actually the same sensor that I've used in cameras like the R10. And it is great. The image quality on this is really good. It's not going to set like records for dynamic range and low light abilities or anything like that, but this is a solid sensor. It's going to mean solid image quality and performance. The colors on this look great, and I still have plenty of dynamic range for some really cool edits, and you can definitely still bring out a lot of those details from the shadows. And I just think that overall, when it comes to image quality on this, you're going to be very happy with what you're getting on the R100. Plus, you have this pop-up flash. Again, not how I would use a flash for the best quality images, but it's great to have. And in some cases, this could be the difference between not getting a picture and getting something that's actually usable. So great to see that one as well. But unfortunately, we need to take a step backwards again, because we need to talk about video. And this is definitely going to be an area of disappointment. And if you read the spec sheet, you probably read 4K video recording. Just forget that you read that, because in 4K, this camera is almost unusable. First, it has an additional crop when using 4K, so you're not even going to be using the entire sensor when using it, so not as good quality. Plus, it suffers from some of the worst rolling shutter I have ever seen. So it's just like looking at Jello if you try and handhold this camera. But it also disables phase detection autofocus. So focusing on moving subjects is going to be almost impossible. It doesn't look good. So for video, as long as you are in good light, an action camera or a phone is actually going to look better than this. So I really wouldn't be using this as a video camera, again, except maybe in super limited cases in low light, or if you need the extra reach that some of these longer lenses can give you that and most phones and action cameras especially wouldn't have. So should you actually buy this? I really wanted to say yes, because at $299, this really opens up a camera to a lot of people who otherwise could not have afforded a camera like this. And I really was hoping that they could get the image quality that a camera like this offers. But I find myself just really in a maybe category on this one. So if you stepped up to a camera like the Canon R50 or the R10 right here, which are still below $1,000 with a lens, this is going to get you a way more usable camera. So the image quality is basically identical, but you get a touch screen, you get massive autofocus improvements, and a big step up in video, and just a whole lot of like modern features and niceties that just make this a much more enjoyable camera to use. But at half the price, less than half the price, the R100 is giving you that same image quality Not the same video quality though, so don't get this for video. But for photography, again, like you're getting the same image quality from more expensive cameras, just with a ton of really crippled features to go along with it. So in my opinion, the worst two offenders are going to be the extremely limited autofocus system and the fixed non-touch screen. So if you can live with those, just know what you're getting on this. But hey, I'm sure you have a phone in your pocket that can be used for selfies. It has a touch screen and it's going to be good for video if you're in good light. So if you want a camera that you want to be able to learn how to use it, have a more tactile feel to it, be able to get a step up in image quality, you're going to learn to shoot raw and edit. This is going to give you way more than like your typical $300 point and shoot is going to give you and your phone in your pocket. So the Canon R100 might be just enough to make that happen. And I do have like all of my favorite lenses and memory cards and batteries and all that kind of stuff in the description. So hit me up with your comments too on what you actually think of the R100. Like seriously, I read everything in those comments. And I got some really awesome things going on. I'm posting some BTS over on Instagram. So check that out. Hope you guys are doing amazing. I'll see you in the next one.